Hello YouTube! Welcome to my tutorial on how to create a simple IRC client using WinForm and C#. We will be using a library which makes this possible so that you don't have to create your own socket connections to the IRC server or whatever is needed. The library you're going to use is a tiny bit different from the others you can find on the internet, because this one also supports DCC downloading. Before we start, I want to apologize for my English for now, because I'm not really good at English, I have to say that. And especially when I have to concentrate on writing code, then I can scramble sentences together which do not make sense. I will also tell you that this tutorial will take quite a while, just because I'm not the fastest typer. And I took the privilege to already create the interface for you, because I hope, and I just think, well, I make this tutorial with the idea that you probably know on how to create interfaces by now. If not, you can check other tutorials on YouTube about creating WinForms in C#. It's quite easy. Just look it up and you will just understand it within a minute. Alright, as you can see here, this is mostly a typical interface for an IRC client. It consists out of a chat window, in this message box, the text box where you put your message in, connect boxes which contain information about the server you want to connect to, two buttons for connecting and disconnecting, and these two rich text boxes. And these two are special. Well, actually, this one, while developing, you want to be able to debug your IRC client, otherwise you do not know what problem might occur and why it doesn't work. Therefore, there's like a separate method in this library which allows you to debug very easily. It's optional, so you don't have to enable it, but I suggest you to use it while developing your IRC client. The first thing we want to do is go back to our code, and as you can see, I already created the events as well, the click events. This makes it a little bit easier to just write the internals of this program. But as you can see, there's no default library in here yet, and we can remove this, by the way. I will show you on how to get this library. It's very easy. You go to the references in your Solution Explorer, right click on it, and then go to Manage Nugget Packages, and then you will have to look for IRC. Just that's it. And there are multiple out here, and like I said, we will be focusing on this one, and this one also supports DCC. As you can see, I already have installed it. You just see a button install or like update, upgrade if you already somehow downloaded it and you have no clue what's going on. I have to say, this library is very much work in progress. There's things might change in the future, and just keep an eye on the GitHub README page that you can find in here on how to use this library. I'm not sure if much is going to change, but if there are changes and stuff doesn't work anymore, you can find out what changed there. Alright, continuing, you can just click to get rid of this. We want to include. I'm just calling include here, this including, because that's more simple to explain. Alright, SimpleIRCLib. That's it. As you can see, I defined the port here. Normally you would have like another separate text field for port, but I think it's not necessary. And just to give you a heads up, the first part of this tutorial will be about just simply chatting, about the chatting part, not about the downloading part. So that will come later in this tutorial, if you're still watching by then. Alright, the first thing you want to do is make a private, or actually a locally, globally, I don't know what you want to call it, IRC class thing called IRC. Is new IRC, simple IRC. This constructor does not take any parameters, just so you can just access it in multiple methods. Just that makes things easier, for me at least. Alright, the first thing we want to do is let the user be make the user able to connect to the server. And you can see we have different text boxes here and the connect button. And as you can see here, I already created the event for this button. So The first thing we want to do is just call the setup IRC method, which allows you to set up the connection to the server. This takes a bunch of parameters. One of them is of course the IP. This is IP in.text. As you can see it here, these are all the parameters. Then next we need the port, which we defined above here. And the following thing is, let's zoom in a bit, it's probably easier to read for you then. The following part is the username, also a text field. Username in.text. What did I do? Right, .text. And the following parameter is, we will leave that blank. This does not work yet. Some IRC servers require a password to join, but this only works with, I didn't implement this feature yet in the library, so unfortunately we cannot use the password parameter here yet, but in the future you might be able to. Alright, continuing, we need the channel input, so channel in.text. And last but not least, the chat output window. And this is going to be a little bit special. I will be talking about that a little bit later because we have to set up multiple things here. But just for now, I already created these callback methods. They are here. And this is like for the output window. This is the output, the chat output, where you will see the messages from the server. That callback method needs two parameters, one for the user and one for the message. The user contains the name from who sent the message, and the message is the message itself. So a little bit self-explanatory, so not too hard, I suppose. I'll just give this method to this parameter, and that's it. The next thing we want to do, and I talked about it earlier, is the debug callback. Every message from the debug inside this library needs to be put into the switch text box, and therefore we have a separate separate method, which allows you to put in another method and allows you to output debug messages. And this method only needs one parameter, and it's just one string basically. So now if you've done that, you can just basically write down irc.startClient, and that's it. And now your client is running. But it's kind of useless if you cannot see the messages from the other users. So we have to write a bit of code to put those messages in this rich text box. And this is a little bit special because we are calling this method from within the library, and this library uses separate threads, separate from the main thread, to run this client server, client. And you cannot do cross-threading calls to another thread like that. You can't. You have to create an invoke for it. And luckily, the WinForm library in C# has already implemented this feature in its library. So if you just go to the chat out window, this is the rich text box we are talking about. Instead of doing append text, we do invoke, and this invoke requires an action, which is actually basically a method. But you can just write out the method directly in here. It's a little bit dirty, if I may call it. Supposedly there are more better ways to do this. But to get this working, we will just do new action and another, those two, and an arrow thingy. And in here you can write your code that you want to execute when this invoke is called. So chat out, append text, and of course we want the user plus, and then message. And then another plus with a new line character at the end. So just to make sure that you don't have like one wall of text without any breaks in it. That's horrible to look at. Right, now that's done. You basically do the same thing for the debug thing. You just copy this over and call this, instead of chat out, debug out. And instead of chat out, debug out. And continuing, we put in here input instead of these messages. It is quite simple, self-explanatory. You probably already, oh man, I could have done that. Yeah, you probably could have. You just some need to know basis. Alright, and now you can see the messages from the server or from the people using chatting in this on the server in your text box. Just what you want. But a chat client wouldn't be a chat client if you cannot send messages. So the next thing we want to do is go to this one. This button needs to send a message from this text box. That's just how simple it is. And good practices is to check if you're actually already connected to a server or if your client is already running, and therefore is this method, which is also self-explanatory. So if your client is running, you want to do send a message, send message. And what you want to send is in this text box, send in.text. And that's it, that's how simple it is. And just for debugging sake, you can do something like this, debug out, append text not connected to a server, just so the user knows that he cannot send messages because he's not connected to the server. Simple. And the next thing, and probably the last thing needed for this application, oh no, the second last thing, is the disconnect button. It's kinda annoying if the user has to quit the application to actually be able to join another server, or just leave and then join another server, because why wouldn't you have that in there? It's like just common sense to have it there. So it's actually basically almost the same as the send button. Sounds a bit weird, but instead of send message, if you just want to write down close stop client, I meant to say that. Definitely meant to say that. And just stops the client, and then you can join another server. And just copy this bit of code, because you might have noticed after the form load method, we have this override method for on-form closing. So if you close the program by clicking on the cross button in the upper right corner, you want to stop the client, otherwise this cipher thread will keep running in the background forever and ever. So what you want to do is just place this down here and remove the debug thing, because when you close the window you cannot see anything anymore. And that's basically it. If I'm right, your client should now be able to run. Hopefully I did not forget anything. So if you press send, you can see you're not connected to the server. And if you put in here a server, this is my favorite IRC server, and we put in here username. Let's be a simple IRC client number 1, and we press connect. And I forgot the end line after this. If I'm right, and I'm not, it's not connecting. Sometimes it's a little bit finicky. Oh no, there we go. It's a little bit slow today. Anyway, we are connected to the server, and I think I did add a break at the sentence. Oh well. Anyway, let's launch up another client to show you that's actually working. If I can open this, and then we go to my documents, and we go to projects, and a lot of stuff is in here. Inform, bin debug. Oh, one is good enough for me. And we do exactly the same thing, and I hope it's working, because I'm using the same port. It might not work, and that's could become an issue. SimpleIRC, it's just SimpleIRC client number 2 connect, and hopefully I hope this is just being slow, and if it isn't, then we have a little bit of an issue. I think we have a little bit of an issue here. Come on, you can do it. I don't think it wants to connect because I'm using the same port. Alright, then we just need to join a different channel where people are actually talking. And we can just do that by pressing disconnect. Not connected to the server. And we change the channel. Connect. And then here we are. And hopefully people will join. And if they are not joining, then we have an issue. Well, I'll probably just launch. Ah, there we go. Joined. And the same thing happens for when you send the messages. Instead of joined, it will say like the message it sent, people sent. So that's basically it. That's your client. Now to continue on what I was building here, I want to create the download function. And it's just a little bit more, just a tiny little bit more code. You have to create another callback or set up another callback method, and that's it. And it's a very long setup function, but that's to be my naming skills are really out of the roof here. Alright, we have already the download update, callback, status change, so let's call it status change. Status change callback. I just put it in here, and this one takes an array as an input. So this array contains all the information about the currently downloading current file that's being downloaded. So if you want to write that down, you have to do exactly the same thing for the debug and the chat out. Just copy this, and instead of I called it download out. Oh, I love my naming skills. Hashtag sarcasm, whatever, how you pronounce it. I don't know. Alright, but this input is an array, as you can see here, and this array contains 10 values. Actually 11 if you count 0. Yeah, 11 values. My apologies. Alright, so beforehand we want to create a string before we put that out in our rich text box. So string download information is alright. The file input 1 on index 1 is the file name, and then we want to actually create a new line. That's probably neat, and then we want to put out the progress in percentages, bloody word. Progress, stupid word, I cannot pronounce that word. It's just from 0 to 100 progress. Yeah, that's it. And that's located at 7. There's a lot more details in there. There's a lot more information in this array, and you can look them up on the GitHub page. I'm not going to go over all of them. Alright, continuing. I'm just getting off my script here. I don't have a script, but in figure of speech. Alright, progress is in percentages. And as you can see, those values do not have a unit to them, so you have to just write them down manually. I thought that could be a little bit more useful. It's a little bit more user friendly because maybe you don't want to call just type it out instead of having this character after your value. Excuse me, your value. Alright, continuing. The next value we want to write down is the download speed. Always important. It's always fun to know how fast your download is going. So, continuing. Download speed, input, and you have 3 types of download speeds: 9 to 11, no, 8 to 10. Where 8 is like bytes per second and 10 is megabyte per second, and as you can guess, 9 is kilobyte per second. Second. That's it. Maybe add a new line, just I don't know, for neatness sake, just so you don't forget. And instead of like appending, I want to change the text, because that's a little bit needed, otherwise you have this whole wall of text about the progress. Is download information. Dun, 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 and we are, I almost messed that up. And we are done. You can now download your files, and I will be showing that to you. So, we want to connect to our lovely server again. .net. Horrible subs. I'm an anime fan, as you probably noticed from this channel. And we call myself Mr. Rare, because that's who I am. And we press connect. and hopefully I joined. So the next thing we want to do is actually look up a package on this website. I'm not making advertisement here. I'm just using this because I can just get something very quickly from a bot. I know it's working. I have to unfortunately say that some bots might be a little bit might just not work. That's just basically it. Alright, let's get a reasonably big file. I like big files. It's to compensate for something. No, alright. Let's say this mobile shoot Gundam sounds interesting. We just put that here and click send. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff in the debug window, but we are downloading this file. And if I open my folder, you probably can see it in here as well. Somewhere. Mobile Suit Gundam. There it is. And that's basically how you add DCC functionality to your IRC application. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have learned something. If not, then show